Hi there, in this video I'll be removing and refitting the suspension unit on a Hotpoint WM11 washing machine. Not because it's faulty, just to demonstrate how they come off and show where all the different washers and rubbers fit. This is not a training video, and this repair should only be attempted if you feel confident enough to do so. Before starting work on any domestic appliance, remove the mains plug from the power supply. Because we're going to lay the machine on its side, the first thing to do is remove as much water from it as possible. So tilt it backwards and prop it up with something, then lower the outlet hose into a washing up bowl. If the hose is held on the back of the machine with a clip, then undo it so it's as low to the ground as you can get it. When no more water comes out of it, lift the hose and stand the machine upright. Undo these two screws on the back of the lid, then you can slide it backwards and lift it off. Pull the soap drawer out as far as it will come, then give it a tug and it will come all the way out. Remove the screws in the opening and put them on one side because they're stainless steel so they don't rust, as well as being slightly longer than all the other screws. To remove the timer knob, you'll have to loosen off the clamping screw holding it onto the timer shaft, and to get to it you need to go through the hole in the top of the cabinet fascia. Behind the knob are two more screws that have to come out, and then the fascia panel can be taken off. The door seal is the next part to come off. If you use a thin bladed screwdriver and lever these two sections apart, the seal retaining wire will come out easily. Now unhook the door seal from the front of the cabinet and fold it inside the drum out of the way. Undo the two screws holding the interlock on. Don't try to take it out, just leave it where it is. It's not in any danger of getting broken. There are three screws along the top of the panel and three more under it. Remove the lower screws first. When the top three screws have been taken out, the front panel can be removed and placed on one side out of the way. Lay an old towel or sheet on the ground to save damaging the floor or paintwork on your machine. Plus, if any water does come out, it will soak it up. Now lay the machine on its side so the suspension unit you're working on is on the top. Undo the nut at the bottom of the suspension and make a note of how the washers and rubber mounts fit, so you replace them in the correct order. With anything like this, where there's a number of different parts that go together, it makes sense to note where each part goes, or you could refit it wrongly. Put your hand through the bottom of the cabinet and grip the suspension unit. Now push it up towards the container until the bolt clears the hole in the base. Pull it downwards and you can remove it from the upper connecting rod. Use a pair of mole grips to grip the rod, but do so as close to the container as possible, because any marks on this rod would damage the nylon housing in the lower section of the suspension unit. There isn't very much room to manoeuvre a spanner on this rod, so if you just fit one to the nut and turn the rod by way of the mole grips, it will come undone. As with the lower part of the suspension, don't just pull everything off, take a minute to look, and notice how the washers and nylon caps all fit together. It will save you time in the long run. On the rod there should be one or two domed nylon caps, depending on the suspension unit fitted. The one closest to the container has the domed edge upwards, and it sits in a metal housing that rests inside a curved recess in the container. To hold it in place, a rubber mounting with a metal covering fits on the other side of the container moulding, and this is held in by a self-locking nut. The last section of the suspension has one or two washers between it and the rubber mounting. This mounting incorporates a small rubber collar on one side which fits into a hole in the cabinet base. Another rubber bush is fitted on the underside of the cabinet that has a recess to fit over the collar, and the whole unit is held in place by a self-locking nut and a large washer. Fit the rubber mounting with the metal plate at the top, and make sure the metal cap is fitted over the domed nylon bushes. Insert the rod into the container and fit the nut. Clamp your mole grips onto the rod as close to the container as possible and tighten the nut. Put some grease into the end of the unit to lubricate the rod, or it will start to squeak after a while. Make sure you've refitted the washers and rubber mounting correctly before reattaching the last section of the suspension, and push it on as far as possible until you can fit the bolt section into the hole in the base of the cabinet. Make sure you fit the lower rubber with the cutout facing up, so it caps over the protruding one from the cabinet, or it won't sit correctly. Be careful when you stand the machine upright or lay it down that you don't inadvertently knock or damage any of the internal components, such as timer or module. If you're replacing both suspension units, which is recommended normally, then lay the machine down the other side and carry out exactly the same procedure. Hook the front panel over the kick plate on the bottom of the cabinet and fit the top screws first. When you put the lower screws on the panel, sight the interlock in place, attach the latch plate and screw the two together. Before you start refitting the door sill, pull it out from inside the drum so it sits evenly around the door opening. This way, when you fit it to the panel, it will go on evenly and not twisted. The retaining band is sometimes hard to get into the lip on the sill, so if you run a drop of washing up liquid between your fingers, then run the band through them, it will help it go on easier. Hook one end of the wire band into the larger of the two clamp sections and fit it to the clip on the panel. Feed the band in the groove around the sill, and with the pronged part of the clasp, join the two sections together. Replace the fascia panel and refit the two screws in the recess behind the timer knob. The knob itself will only fit in one position, so you may need to turn it until it locates. Then push it on and tighten the clamping screw. If you remember to keep these separate, you should have 4 stainless steel screws that are slightly longer than the others, because they have to screw into the soap dispenser rather than the cabinet. When they're fitted, slide the drawer in, but make sure the flap at the end is in the closed position or it won't fit. Replace the top, screw it down, and you're ready to water test the machine. On behalf of Selfix UK, we'd like to thank you for watching this video and hope you found it interesting. Goodbye.